Today I'm joined by a very special guest. Neil joins me today. How you doing, Neil?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much.
So you have had a bit of a diverse journey, gone to Asia, played a lot in England, but I want to talk to you about your playing career and how it shaped you as a person. So let us know how it shaped you from day one up to where you are now.
I think mostly it gives you that sort of professionalism, that structure, that mindset. I think it's very, very hard to sort of put into a couple of sentences really what makes a professional footballer, but I think definitely the focus, the dedication, the commitment, the sacrifice. I think all them sort of underlie the way of becoming a professional footballer.
What sacrifices have you made down your career then?
Probably decision making when it came to around leaving school, what I'm going to do in the future, what my aspirations were as a person. I always knew I was going to go into football. That was my focus. That was my dedication. So the sacrifices of not going out with friends, going out to parties because I'm training, because I've got a game the next day or something like that. So all them sacrifices as a young adult um, put me in good stead on the right pathways to becoming a professional footballer.
If we start way back to when you were younger, maybe secondary school, maybe late primary school, early secondary school, were you into football then? And if so, how often were you how often were you out there kicking a football?
All the time. My dad was an ex-professional footballer, so it was sort of the next step for me was sort of following not in his footsteps, but just sort of everything was about football for me. So from youngest age I can remember, it was getting a ball and kicking around, and then constantly out in the garden, practicing, learning new stuff. So it was always there from a young age.
Were you in the school football team? Were you a standout?
Yeah, yeah. I was sort of always playing a year above me, so or 2 years above me at some stages. So yeah, so it was always the first pick, shall we say?
When you moved on from the time in secondary school, you must have been in some academy. So tell us the academy and remember, can you tell us some memorable moments that you've had in that academy?
Yeah, so when I was 15, because I'm an August birthday, so I was due to move up to Leeds and sign for Leeds United. But in my first game for them, I broke my leg, so sort of that put me out of it for a year with that injury. So I was due to go up, move up to Leeds, finish my education, finish my GCSEs at a school in Leeds, and then everything, that broken leg put everything on hold for a year. So it was a difficult time at there. So I finished my education at my school in West Bromwich, and then signed YTS with Leeds after that.
So when you broke your leg, you must have been feeling some sort of disappointment because, as you say, you could have moved up there and kicked a ball even more with Leeds United. How did they treat you when you were injured? Did they stay in contact? Did you sign the contract after the injury?
Leeds were brilliant, to be honest. Obviously, I broke my leg. I was up in Leeds, so I spent a lot of time at St James's Hospital in Leeds through my operations and stuff on my leg, and spent a lot of time in the hospital. And Leeds were brilliant. They were always on the phone asking how I was, how my recovery. Did all my rehab at Leeds, so I was travelling up quite a lot from Birmingham up to Leeds, probably 2 or 3 times a week at some stage, getting rehab. And then they sort of said to us, look, we're going to have to see you in a game, see if you come back to sort of the standard that you was before your leg, before we offer you anything. So I managed to play a game, a couple of games, and they offered me, I think I signed a 2 or 3 year deal with Leeds. So
How old were you then?
uh, 15, 16 when I signed YTS at the time for Leeds.
So then you were at Leeds for not a long time, I believe. You got sent out on loan. Is that correct?
No, I was at Leeds, and then Alan Smith had just broke into the first team, so I knew really there was not much of an opportunity there. So then I went to Stockport County in the Championship then from Leeds.
You must have seen Alan Smith play. What was he like at that age?
He was constantly how he was from that age right the way up to when he retired. He was aggressive, but did everything in the right way, and is a manager's dream. So it was quality to work with and to learn off as well.
You said that you could have learnt off him. Why didn't you learn off him more? Was there not an opportunity for yourself to push yourself even further with Alan Smith, to push yourself together?
I think at the stage that Leeds were when I was there, Champions League and near the top of the Premier League, and bringing players in there, the likes of Jimmy Floyd Esselbank up there, they would bring Mark Viduka. Alan had just broke into the first team, so I sort of took it on myself. Instead of sitting around here for another 2 years, I want to go out and play, and manage to get a deal at a Championship club.
How did that deal work out? Can you tell us everything from the moment you got in contact, or they got in contact, Stockport County, and then how did you end up there? Tell us everything.
I went Once I'd left Leeds, I went and played a game at Worcester City, and a scout from Stockport was at Worcester City game. Said we'd like you to come up and play a game. So invited me up. I went up. I think about a week later or a few days later, played a game for them. Probably one of the best games I've ever played in my life. And they offered me a 2.5 year deal straight away.
Was that a bit of a relief? Because once you didn't get that opportunity and you just obviously broke your leg at Leeds, it would have been a bit of a horror for you, because you had the opportunity to have a decent move to Leeds United, a very good move in fact, and then you ended up leaving to go to Stockport. So how disappointed would you have been had you not got that big opportunity from the Championship club?
Yeah, it was a massive, obviously, relief for myself, but I always had confidence in myself, always had confidence in my ability. A lot of my career, there was a lot of injuries in my career, but I always had belief that if I was fit, I'd be able to do a job. So when I was going into Stockport, I knew that all I have to do is go out and show what I can do, and get a deal, and I did. So
You spoke about injuries. Was it, if we're going to look at the wider picture of your whole career, let's not go too in depth now, but did injuries play a big part of maybe games that you could have been playing, but because you were injured, you couldn't?
massive. I don't think I ever had a run of 5 games where I wasn't fit. So I'd come back from an injury, play 4 or 5 games, and then be out with another injury. So I think I've had probably every injury going in the medical book. So yeah, it was a very frustrating and very difficult time. Never really achieved sort of what I should have in football due to injury, but again, I was blessed to be a part of the 1% people that do make it as a professional footballer.
Do you consider yourself lucky? I mean, I know you said that you were a very good player, but could luck have played a part if they were to look at the wider picture and think he could have cost us? You could have been there for that final, but you weren't because you're injured. So, do sometimes you look back and think that you were that lucky person?
Uh, you have to have luck in football. You might have a luck when it comes to yourself, or another player gets injured and you get your opportunity. And so football's full of luck, but I think you make your own luck. And I think if you're talented enough and you're dedicated enough, I think you make your own luck.
So, how did the time at Stockport play out? You must have been decent there. How did it plan out? What managers were you playing under as well?
So when I first went in, it was Andy Kilner. And Andy was an ex-player at Stockport, a winger. So he helped me a lot. Also, the coaching staff there, Craig Madden, who was unbelievable as a coach, learned a lot from him as well. And Dave Moss was Andy Kilner's assistant. So the group of players that we had at Stockport at the time was a great set of lads. Everyone got on, and we all helped each other. So it was a really good club to settle in with. It's a family-led club, so everybody was there for the right reasons to help everybody else. So my time at Stockport was brilliant. I loved it.
Was there a time where you went on a bit of a spree of maybe a winning run? How long were you at Stockport for? And was there promotions, relegations? Tell us a story.
Yeah, I was at Stockport for 2.5 years. So we was in the Championship then for a season. Got relegated to League One, and then stayed in League One when I left to go to Macclesfield. So yeah, there was ups and downs at the club, but we had a good bunch of players, a lot of international players at the time. When Carlton Palmer came in, he sort of turned the club around, and in terms of bringing in the kind of players that we tried to get back up into the Championship.
You said about the club's environment and how crucial it was to some of the things that you achieved at the club. If you do have a poor atmosphere, and I have spoken to a few other players about this, if you have a poor club atmosphere, regardless of how good you are as a team in terms of your attributes, could it really affect your results because the team mentality, the team chemistry is not there?
Yeah, 100%. I've played with clubs where there's quite a divide in the changing room. Certain players will sit with certain players, and you don't really mix. I think there was evidence of that with the England squad when we had so many good players. But I think if you've got a talented group of players that get on, you're generally going to have success on the field.
When you were at Stockport, then there must have been some players that maybe you, in the back of your mind, you really didn't like, and they were winding you up, or you just didn't get along with them because you just didn't like them. How did you get those players to end up just not affecting you? Because that must have been difficult, and at a team where you want to be pushing at such a professional level as well. How do you make sure that these players don't get in your head?
That was the thing when we was at Stockport. To be honest, I can't really recall ever feeling that about players. But obviously, other players, you could sense it with other players against other players. But how we was at Stockport was, as soon as you cross that white line with your teammate, we're all friends. We're all there to do a job. We're all there to help each other. So there was never anything like that on the field. Anything off the field negative, we never took it onto the field together.
So after you left Stockport County, what was the next move after that? Was it Macclesfield, like you said?
Yeah, I got bought by Macclesfield because Dave Moss, the assistant manager at Stockport, then got the Macclesfield job. So he bought me from Stockport. I'd gone on loan at Stockport to Bristol Rovers during my time at Stockport, and also went on loan at a club over in China throughout the summer to get myself fit because I'd been out most of the season. So it was to get fit, come back, and have a pre-season of playing football. Came back and started the season really well. Scored on my debut, home and away, and then injuries again, and then got the move to Macclesfield.
When you were at Macclesfield, what division were they in? They were in National League, right?
League Two, no, League Two at the time.
So was that not a disappointment? I know you probably would be playing more regular football, but dropping down divisions is never something that a player wants to do. So why was that a thing that you wanted to do? Was it just more playing time, or was it easier down there?
No, I think it was just more playing time, and I think I've been at Stockport for 2.5 years. Love the club, but obviously couldn't sort of give what I wanted to in terms of on the field due to injuries. So I think my time and the way the club was going, it was my time to really move on. And Macclesfield is a club that I knew a few players from there at the time, so it felt like a good move at the time.
When you were at Macclesfield Town, did you learn anything? Were you with the top elite players that you were with at Leeds and Stockport, or was it still a step below and you're going a bit back?
I wouldn't say a step below because that's a bit of disrespect to Macclesfield. Obviously, the level of players and the level of players at Leeds and the level of players at Macclesfield, I think it's obvious that it wasn't the same. But you always learn from every player, and that's what I say as a coach. Doesn't matter who the coach is. If you're a good coach, you'll always learn from another coach, and that was the same as playing. Stuff that players are doing at that level that work at that level. So you have to adapt your game and learn stuff at that level as well.
So when the assistant manager left Stockport and joined Macclesfield Town, Was it a sense of, because he bought you, you must have been knowing each other for quite a long time. He must have also done some similar things to the previous manager that he was with at Stockport. Was that correct? Is that correct to say that you were very familiar with what he was going to achieve?
Yeah, I had a good relationship with Mossy. Things were really good. At Stockport, we enjoyed our time together. Then he went to Macclesfield, and as soon as I heard that he was in for me and wanted me there, then yeah, there wasn't a hesitation really to go there.
All these things that you're telling me, the injuries, the way that you've moved about clubs, that must have helped you become the coach that you are today. So, talk a bit in the present and maybe going a bit back, maybe a year or two. How has it developed you as a coach, and what do you do now?
There's not much that a young player can tell me that I haven't experienced myself. So I think it's vital that the experiences I've gathered throughout my football career, it's important to put it onto the young players as well, because they all have aspirations to play at the top level, but obviously not everyone makes it. So they have to be ready for disappointment. They have to be ready for alternatives in the career. So I think my experience of living it, but also the highs and the lows of being a professional footballer, I think helps me relate over to the young players.
So, are you a realist with the young players? Do you often tell them that you're only that you are part of the 1%, but you might not be? Is that how you go about the business, or do you say that everyone can have a chance if they work to it?
I don't put it as bluntly as that, but they have to. It's down to them at the end of the day. They can have all the ability in the world, but if they're not willing to sacrifice and dedicate themselves 100% to what they want to achieve, then I can't do that for them. I can give them all the advice, I can give them all the sessions, but I can't give them that what they need.
Is there a certain style to your performances that you like to relay onto the players that you like to put onto them? Is there certain formations or certain ways that you like them to pass the ball, maybe in triangles? What do you like to do?
Yeah, there's certain patterns of play that I like to put into the club and put into the players. But every player is different, every club's different. So for me, it's about adapting to the club, to the surroundings, to the players. Obviously, I like to put across my points and what I expect of players, but it depends obviously what level of player you're working with, what the aspirations of the club or the academy that you're working with, what's their goals, what do they want to achieve. So it's about being adaptive really as a coach.
So later down the line, later on today, we'll talk about the time that you spent at Leeds United Women. But just very quickly, when you were at Leeds, I understand that they give you an objective. So, for example, let's say they wanted you to win the league, right? But that maybe wasn't in contention. Maybe you were going to finish fourth or fifth, but you were just outside. Do you tell that to the board, or do you still take that as an opportunity to prove your point and prove that you're the top manager, or are you a realist at times as well?
I think a bit of both. I think you have to be a realist. If you set out with aspirations at the beginning of the season of what you want to achieve, and halfway through the season, it's about reflecting and sitting back and thinking, right, are we on track? If we're not on track, what can we do better? If we need to bring players in. So, like I said, it's very much about being adaptive as a coach and making sure that you're willing to adapt and to your surroundings as a coach.
Again, we'll talk later that you have spent a lot of times with clubs on 1 month loans, going to China, like you said. That must have been extremely hard to adapt to. So, when you do move clubs and you move around academies, are you used to constantly moving about, or do you still have to settle in? Is there still long duration to settle in?
Yeah, you have to settle in, but I think you have to pick the right club to be able to do that. So if I was going on a 1 month loan to a club that I knew about that I thought I'm not sure about, I probably wouldn't go because I know that it would be a waste of time because it'd take me 3 weeks to settle in. So I think it's very much doing your homework on the clubs, on the academies, on the jobs that you're going into to find out is this going to be right for me? Does it fit me as a person? Does it fit me as my personality? And I think that's what it's about, making the right choices.
So when you were moving to these clubs, then how many things do yourself and other players take into consideration? It's obviously not just about the money; it's about your playing time. But is there other things that maybe us fans don't quite know, like you said um, about settling in and how long that might take? So what else is in consideration when you get offered this role at that club?
Um, as a player, it's about your living arrangements. Are you in a B&B? Are you in a hotel? Are you in a house? Can you move your family up? And so all these things are taken into consideration. Is it far to travel home? How often can I get home? And so there's a lot of considerations to take. It's not just about, like you said, is the money right? Will I play every week? It's everything else that sort of fits in around it as well. So I think a big thing for me was making sure I was at a club where I felt comfortable and it was accessible to go home and see with the family as well.
When you were playing for Stockport County, did you have an agent? Did you have an agent that was helping you with these moves?
Yeah.
So, as a coach now, do you still have the agent or not?
I have got an agent now, but it's not the same one as when I played. It's a different one now.
So I'm always very curious. So how do agents help you? Because agencies are different. They offer a big package, and some of them might be similar to others, but some might offer this that the other one doesn't. So how do agents? Let's go back to your playing career. How often do agents firstly keep in contact with you to genuinely ask how you're doing, and secondly, how do they benefit you? Because obviously you're paying part of your money to them. So do they benefit you in that sense?
Yeah, I think at the time I wasn't really needing an agent at the time. It was more everyone else has got one, so I best get one just in case anything comes up. But for me, it wasn't something that I needed an agent because I was having multiple £1 million transfers that needed to be dealt with. Mine was very small scale stuff, so it was more just advice really, and that I'm signing the right stuff and then advising me on the clubs and stuff really, more than anything to do with finances or.
You stopped playing at the age of 27. I'm guessing that's because of injuries, but I don't want to presume
Yeah.
anything. So it was. Okay, so what motivated you then when you constantly got injured and you constantly had these setbacks? How was the transition from player to coach? You must have had to change your mindset. You're no longer part of the team. You're now the manager of the team. So there must have been. They often say there's less banter between the coach and the players. So tell us, what was it like having that transition period?
Yeah, it was difficult. Obviously, throughout my life, it was always I'm the player, they're the coach, they're the manager. So yeah, it was difficult to adapt to at the start. It was more sort of the expectation really of players was, how can you not do that when I find it simple to do that? And it was adapting, putting myself into their position instead of expecting them to be at my sort of level and where I wanted them to be straight away. So it was adapting to sort of being more patient, allowing the players to make mistakes and getting them to the level really that they need to be at, instead of expecting them to already be there.
How are you different to other coaches? Because there's hundreds and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of coaches around the world. They might not be at this level, but they're at the decent level to be able to coach a team, should we say? So, if there was a player, for example, that came to you and you knew that they didn't quite have the ability just yet, but you see a little spark in them that really could take them up to the next level. How do you benefit that player to the extent that they really could start getting these academy moves?
For me, it's about the man management side of it. It's about knowing how this player can develop. There might be things off the field that's affecting him that are halting his progression as a player. So for me, it's getting to know every player, getting to know them fully, what makes them tick, where they live in, the family situation, everything about the player it's important to me to get to know them, because ultimately they're the players that go out on the pitch. So if things aren't right off the pitch, it's going to affect them on it. So for me, it's always about the man management side of it and sort of from my playing career, there was some managers that didn't give you the time of day, that don't care what's going on off the pitch, you've got to go out and perform, where other managers give you that time of day where they sit down with you and say, is everything okay, and what can we do as a club, what can we do? So I sort of take bits of everything really out of my football career, and hopefully give it into the players to progress on the
From
field.
what you just said there, I'd prefer a manager that was man managing, that actually cared how you were doing, and if there's off field issues that would help you. But there's some managers that aren't. So could you tell me a rough percentage of managers that would be able to help you and that would sit down with you?
Sort of in my career, I'd probably say it was about a 60-40 split. 60% that would, 40% that wouldn't. So I sort of took that 60% of, that's the kind of manager and coach I'd want to be, because it helped me as a player, and I could see the reaction of other players once they did that. So I took sort of that side of it.
Out of that 60-40 split, what managers would likely succeed more in your playing and managerial? And just as a fan of the sport, what managers are more likely to succeed? The ones that do care, or the ones that don't care and just tell you to get on with the job?
I think nowadays the ones that do care, because there's that much emphasis on mental health and everything else nowadays, that I think that the old school style of managing sort of doesn't quite cut it, compared to the new style of manager, where it's all about getting to know the players and stuff like that. So I think 60% of the coaches I worked on would succeed nowadays. Then
When you were playing then, was there ever a time where you had that 40 split of managers where they didn't care how you were doing and you just had to get on with it? And if so, or even if you've just heard about it, what do the players react? What's their reaction? Do they just get on with a job? Do some of them feel even more down because their manager that they're meant to be working with every single day doesn't care?
yeah, of course. I mean, you have players that are ultimately, players are selfish. Players will go out and perform for themselves anyway, and the teammates not so much. If the manager's not on their side, then as a group of players, you go out and perform for yourselves anyway, and the supporters. So really, that for me, that didn't really affect me in terms of the way the manager was to the group, because I knew the group of players that I played with would go out for themselves anyway and perform for themselves.
Let's go back to your playing career then in China. So I want to ask you, I want to talk a while about this. Why was China the correct option? It's very far away from England. So why was that correct?
While I was at Stockport County, we had sort of an agreement and attachment to a club in China, so we used to go out on pre-season tours there, and the connection they had between the club and Stockport was they agreed to send one player from the Chinese club to Stockport and one player from Stockport over to China. So they asked me if I'd be interested in doing it, and I said yeah. So as a 17-year-old, it was quite daunting, but I enjoyed the experience.
What's the point of that commercialize? Oh my god, I can't even talk. What's the point of that deal between the two clubs? Is there did China really want you to be with them? Why were you different to the rest? Why do they want you?
I don't think they particularly wanted me. It was just, I think Stockport had an idea of a few players that would be interested to go over. I think they spoke to them and spoke to me, and I said, yeah, I'd love to go and experience it. And so, yeah.
What's China like? I've never been myself. So tell us, what's it like?
Um, Bit of a crazy place, to be honest. Very westernized in some areas, very, very not in other areas. So it was sort of, you had everything that you wanted that you would in Leeds or Manchester, but there was other areas of it, and sort of the diet and the food was a little bit eye-opening at some places. Yeah.
When you were in Wuhan, were you treated well? Just the culture of the football over in China? Do the players get treated well over there?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, I was the only English player in the area, so it didn't matter where I went. I was constantly getting hassled, and it was a great experience for me because you felt like a superstar and you couldn't go anywhere without getting mobbed and stuff. So for me, it was eye-opening. It was different to what I had experienced in the UK. So yeah, it was good.
When you went to China, do you know what year that was?
I think around 2001. I think around that. Yeah.
So when you say that China isn't too westernized, we know about the politics over in China. When you say it's not too westernized in some areas, do you mean poverty by that?
No, just in terms of some areas that'd be built up with full of shops, designer shops. Other areas it'd be little shacks and stuff like that. So I mean, because of the size of China, every game we played away, we had to fly to. So you'd always fly to different areas, and you'd see difference in some areas to other areas. So when we played in Beijing, it was amazing, and then it's just like being in London, and then you flew to another place, and it was like nowhere, totally different. So yeah, it was good to experience all the different parts and different areas.
So you were playing in China just before, I think it was 2014 or 15, where they really started to invest in when they brought players like Oscar over to China and all these big names that were playing in the Premier League. So you were just before
Yeah.
that. Was it? And when you looked at it from when you went there to 2015-16, when they started to invest compared to now, did you see that investment starting to get pushed, or was it just started to getting pushed when it was 15-16?
I think football, everything in China is always always extreme. There's always, but I think football side of it wasn't as big as it grew. Like in our squad, you could only have 3 international players. So there's a me, English, a Brazilian, and a Bulgarian player at the time. So sort of it was a quite well known for South American players and stuff like that. But in terms of English, and it wasn't much of a sort of a pull really to go over to China at that time of year.
Did you have to learn Chinese, or was there a translator with you to help you? Because you said there were two other
Yeah,
foreign players, but let's say they didn't speak English.
yeah. I mean, the foreign players did speak English, but they also were fluent Chinese because they'd been there for a few years. So yeah, it was a case of learning as much as I could of the um, language, but also I did have a translator as well because it was quite a difficult language to pick up. But I did manage to get along quite well with that.
When I look at China and I look at all their stadiums, the architecture there is very nice. They have got some really nice stadiums. So you must have been playing in some of these grounds. So tell us what it was like. If the stadiums were packed, you must have played on a few of those occasions.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, you'd have to get police escorts to games. Um, you'd play in front of 30, 45, 50,000. It was crazy. The noise was unreal. And that's sort of what I wanted to go and experience because, no disrespect to Stockport, you'd play in front of 4 or 5,000 and it was great, but don't think the level I was playing at, I'd ever get to experience playing in front of 45, 50,000 people. So it was a great experience for myself and loved it, to be honest. It was really good.
You said when you were in China, you felt like a superstar. Were you like that on the pitch? What was the managerial system like over in China? Do you remember the name of the manager?
No, I don't remember the name of the manager, to be honest. It was a Chinese guy, so it was very structured. I know you have to be up at 6 o'clock. You'd be doing exercises. It was all very structured, very routine. It was like, not, I wouldn't say like an army camp, but it was very focused and structured, and everything had to be done precisely. And so it was a massive culture shock to myself. And obviously, over here, you just get out, get your boots on, go out, have a little kickabout to start to warm up, and then you go and warm up, and then session would start, where your session starts there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you have to be here at a certain point, do certain exercises, do this, do that. Very regimented, but it was great. It was good learning for me.
Why did that not become a permanent move? Would you not have preferred to stay over in China? Everything you just told me sounded
No,
very positive.
no, obviously I wanted to go and experience it, but once I came back, I wanted to, obviously, I came back fit, so I was ready to play, and then started the season well. So it was never a permanent thing for me. It was just, I know I was going there for 3 months throughout the summer to get fit, so that's what I did.
What was the Chinese weather like? Because now we see like Liverpool going to Dubai because it's hot weather training. Was the weather over in Wuhan, was it nice and warm, or was it quite cold
I
at
was
times?
boiling, boiling. It was, even when it rained, it was still hot, very humid, and I don't think I could touch another salt drink again in my life, because you had to drink stuff like that to so your body didn't cramp up. And so yeah, it was very humid, very hot.
If we're going to go outside of the managerial and playing career, let's talk about China in this 15-16 season, whenever it was when they started to get loads of money and invest. So I want to ask you, why do you think that failed? You were saying about the 40,000 people inside the stadiums. Surely that was bringing enough revenue in to bring transfers in. Why did it fail?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it was more political. I think that, obviously, I don't want to get involved in, because I don't know anything about that, but I think it was more political than actually fan-based stuff and club-based stuff. So I don't really know, to be honest.
You must have learnt quite a bit of Chinese that maybe you can still pick up on now. So let's say China was a success. Could you maybe have put your coaching career over in China?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to new experiences, and I think if an opportunity did come along, then it'd be something that I'd have to seriously think about. Obviously, take into consideration family and everything else. But yeah, I think something I'd like to experience as a manager.
So talk to us now about your business, Pathway2Pro Academy. Tell us what that's about.
So came back from the Middle East, and thought I wanted to do something different. So instead of, there was a lot of other academies that were working with players 16 to 18 on education programs, but I wanted to do something different. So I started this academy for sort of 18 to 23-year-olds. So it was offering them opportunity to come in full-time football, but also working as well. So all the players got sponsored by businesses, and the player had to go and work so many hours a week for this business. So it was gaining them not just football experience, but work experience as well. So a lot of companies were on board. It was really good. One player that came into my academy eventually went out and became a quantity surveyor. So he realised that the football wasn't going to work out for him, but because he'd been working at this company throughout his time at the academy, then went into that. And so yeah, it was, for me, it was giving them an opportunity and targeting sort of the older age group that sort of get missed.
That's very crucial because I often say to people that if you're going to look at a country that's underdeveloping, for example, if you're going to look at a country in Africa, let's say Congo, for example, and I spoke to someone from Angola, and they said that the money getting put into the country in the FA, they just don't do it. It's near enough non-existent. The pitches are awful. There's no such thing as
Yeah.
Sunday League. So if you got all of those players from every single country and you put them together, you could have a team that could really, really push. They could do very good stuff. This team full of talented people. So why was it something to you? Why was it so crucial to get these 18 to 23-year-olds into your academy? Because if they're 23, it's unlikely they're going to be hitting Premier League standards, right?
Yeah, but for me, it wasn't about creating Premier League players. It was about giving players that have been released from clubs. So we had a player that had been released from Celtic. He came down, joined the academy from Scotland, because he felt there wasn't any other opportunities really where he lived. And because of his age, he thought it's too late for him now. So it was about giving players the opportunity at that age to still continue with the football, still showcase himself against pro clubs, but also to think of an alternative career as well, which I thought was important because they need something to fall back on.
So tell us about your time in the Middle East. You were in Oman, I believe. So tell us how that was.
Oman, yeah, it was really good. So it came about from Steve Bellis, who's still at Stockport County now. He was the commercial manager at Stockport, so he did all the deals with the Chinese and stuff in terms of the club and the sponsorship and everything. So we used at Stockport, we had sort of part of our role as a first team player was to go into schools and deliver school talks and question answers to local children. And I'd always help Steve out when other players couldn't make it and turn up. He'd always ring me and say, "Look, short notice, but can you get to this school?" And so I did that for Steve. And then 10 years later, we'd stayed in touch by the odd message over Christmas and whatever. And then 10 years later, he said, "I've got a project over in Oman, delivering what we used to deliver when I was at Stockport to all schools and coaching and stuff." And he said, "Would you be interested?" And I'd just come out of playing football. So I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So it came about that, and spent a year out there.
What's it like over there?
I loved it. Really enjoyed it. Met some very, very good people that I still speak to now on a regular basis. And it was an hour and 20 drive from Dubai, so it wasn't as the way it was over there with the GCC. It wasn't as built up as Dubai. It was very cultural still there, and don't think any building was over 4 stories high. But yeah, it was amazing over there.
How did you end up as the assistant manager of FCB Magpies over in Gibraltar? Because again, that's a really nice move. Because I always like people who like to move to these hot destinations, and you seem to be moving to all of them. So tell us about the time in Gibraltar.
So it came through my agent. He contacted me saying there's an opportunity if you'd like to go over to Gibraltar. And I said yes. So he put me in contact with Jansen Daly, who was the sporting director of the club out there. Had a chat with him on the phone, and then I met up with Nathan Rooney, who was the manager at the time. He's just gone back there actually. So, but I met with Nathan in the UK. We sat down, had a chat, and I think we just gelled as a couple really in terms of my ideas and what I expect, sort of my visions. And we sort of hit it off straight away. So yeah, it was great experience, great opportunity to go out there and progress in terms of senior football.
When the senior football came to you, obviously at this club, what was the best achievement that you achieved with this club?
So I went there in the June. They'd already qualified for the Europa Conference League qualifiers. So I went in and we played the first leg at Crusaders. So I'd experienced Conference League, UEFA Conference League football. First time I was in there. That was brilliant. Traveling to Ireland, and then came back. We finished third in the league. Won the Rock Cup, which is the equivalent to sort of their FA Cup. So we won that. So the first trophy in the club's history. And then we qualified for the Europa Conference League again that same season. So yeah, we achieved quite a lot in one season.
How did the qualifiers go then? Did you get far in the competition?
No, we got knocked out both rounds in the first qualifying round. So I wasn't there for this qualifying. So we'd done the season, qualified, and then Nathan left. So I agreed to leave as well at the same time because I didn't think it was right to go back to the club without Nathan there. So I didn't go back. But so we lost in the first qualifying rounds.
You spoke about them winning the Rock Cup, right? Gibraltar's not big whatsoever. So how many teams are there together? And did you have to fly elsewhere to go to these games?
No, there's 12 Premier League teams in the Gibraltar League. So it was a cup obviously between all 12 teams.
Gibraltar seems a bit of a crazy place to me. It's Spain, but obviously it's owned by England and Britain. So tell me, did you speak English out there, or was it a case of a lot of them speaking Spanish?
It was a mix. Obviously, English is the first language in Gibraltar, but a lot of them speak Spanish. So it's quite strange to be speaking with a player who's got a Cockney accent, and all of a sudden he'll just burst into Spanish when it comes to a Spanish person. So it was eye opening. But I lived over in Spain at the time, so I sort of travelled across to Gibraltar for training sessions and games. So.
Is it not possible then for any Gibraltar team to qualify for the Champions League, or is it just a case of you finishing maybe third
Yeah,
to qualify for
no,
Commonwealth?
Lincoln Red Imps are probably the biggest club in Gibraltar who qualify for the champion. So if you win the league, you qualify for the Champions League qualifiers. If you finish second and third, you qualify for the Europa Conference League qualifiers. So
What's Gibraltar football like? Is it quite fast paced or slow? Is it like Spanish football?
no, it's quite fast paced, to be honest. I'd probably say it's equivalent to sort of League Two level. So it's a good level of football. There's a lot of Spanish, South American players there. So the standard's good.
So how long ago then did you end up at Leeds United Women? Was that before this or recent?
Yeah, it was well before this. That was when I first came back from Oman. I
And what did you
obviously came
achieve?
back and won.
What did you achieve with the lot
Um,
in Leeds?
Nothing really. It was a sort of a very tough time for the club because it was run through Leeds United Foundation, because the club had said they don't want anything to do with the Leeds ladies section of it, and so it was very toxic time, really, to be honest, at the club. So it wasn't the most enjoyable time. It was great coaching the women and coaching obviously different aspects, experiencing different aspects of coaching, but it was a very difficult time for the club. So there wasn't really that much support for the ladies side of it.
There must be some more support going into it now, though, right?
Yeah, I think obviously with everything that's going on with the women's side of football now, I think there's a lot more support going into clubs and stuff. So
Well, that wraps up everything from me, Neil. Thank you very much for joining me.
no problem.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks very much.